The old house smelled faintly of rain and lemon polish, a scent that instantly transported Ethan back to a time he had tried to leave behind. He stood by the tall window, watching the last drops of a gentle evening shower slide down the glass. The sky outside was a moody, bruised purple, but the atmosphere inside the house felt even heavier, weighted down by the ghosts of the past. Before I unfold the rest of this night, take a second to hit like and subscribe. It really does help more than you know, and if you're drawn into stories like this, I want you here for every one of them. Also tell me in the comments, where are you watching from? Are you in a small town where the evenings fall slow and gentle, or in a city where the lights never quite go dark? His younger sister, Maya, darted around the living room, her hands a blur as she collected scattered sheets of music that had tumbled from the piano. They were old and worn, the edges soft and fragile, their father's music, the melodies that had once filled the house with life and laughter. "Hurry up, Ethan. We don't have much time before Mom gets home," Maya said, her voice a mixture of urgency and a fragile tenderness. She let out a light laugh, but there was a tremor in her words, a hint of nerves hiding just beneath the surface. Ethan turned toward her, the ache of years of absence pressing down on him like a physical weight. He hadn't been home in a long time. Not since college. Not since the hushed, angry fights his parents used to have. Not since the day he'd left without a proper goodbye. Now, standing in the house that had once been a haven of comforting chaos, he felt the past wrap around him so tightly it was almost hard to breathe. Maya held up a tarnished silver picture frame, a soft frown on her face. It was a photo of their father, his arm wrapped around both of them, a gentle, distant smile on his face. "Mom's been crying every night since you left," she said quietly. "She misses you, Ethan. You should talk to her. Really talk." Ethan's hands trembled slightly as he took the frame. He felt the immense weight of his own regret, of a responsibility he had abdicated long ago. "I will," he murmured, his voice low and nearly swallowed by the quiet of the room. "But let's finish this first." He moved toward the piano, the dark, polished wood gleaming under the dim evening light. Maya followed, placing the last of the music sheets carefully on the stand. Her fingers brushed against his for just a second, and in that fleeting moment both of them froze, their gazes locking. The contact was brief, but it carried the unspoken truths of years apart, the quiet ache of a shared history and the soft, confusing pang of emotions neither had fully understood until now. The rain outside seemed to mirror the storm brewing inside them, its gentle tapping on the windows an echo of the tension that had been building silently between them. Ethan sat on the piano bench, his fingers hovering over the ivory keys. He could almost hear Maya's heartbeat in the quiet spaces between the raindrops, and it was a painful reminder of how much time had slipped away. For years, he had believed that leaving was the only choice, a way to escape the crushing weight of loss. But now, seeing her here, he wondered if running had only left him emptier. She watched him, her eyes a mixture of hope and fear, as if she knew they were standing on the precipice of something significant. "Let's just finish the song," Maya whispered, her voice a fragile thread in the silence. Ethan nodded and pressed down on the first key. The sound was hesitant at first, a little broken from years of neglect, but as he continued, the notes began to flow more smoothly, each one carrying a piece of a memory, a fragment of a life they had once shared so completely. Maya joined in, her fingers moving over the keys with a growing confidence, and together they wove a melody that was more than just music. It was a bridge across the years they had lost, a delicate thread tying their hearts back together. The room seemed to shrink around them as the music swelled, carrying with it the ghosts of laughter, tears, and all the unspoken words that had piled up between them. A warmth spread through Ethan's chest, a dawning realization that the connection he thought was lost forever was still there, fragile, but alive. Maya's head tilted slightly toward him, a small smile playing on her lips, and in that moment he saw a glimpse of the sister he had loved but had never truly understood. Then came the flood of memories, whispered secrets under blankets, afternoons spent racing through the garden, the patient guidance of their father during their first piano lessons. Each memory was a bittersweet pang of both joy and sorrow. He had left it all behind, chasing a future that was supposed to be brighter. And yet, here he was, his fingers brushing against hers again. trying to make sense of a silence that had stretched for far too long. Maya hesitated, then spoke, her voice barely audible over the gentle rain. "Do you remember the day Dad said this piano would always bring us back together?" He nodded, swallowing a lump in his throat. "I remember, I never forgot." They continued to play, the music now a steady, pulsing rhythm that matched the beating of their hearts. Every note was saturated with emotion, regret, longing, love, and the quiet, fierce joy of rediscovery. For a moment, the world outside faded away. The old house, the rain, even the looming arrival of their mother, all of it dissolved into the simple, raw truth of the music and the connection they were slowly, carefully rebuilding. As the last notes lingered in the air, Ethan and Maya sat side by side, both breathing heavily, both lost in thoughts they were too afraid to speak aloud. His hand brushed against hers again, lingering for a fraction of a second longer this time, and he could feel the warmth of her presence anchoring him. He had spent so long running from the past, but he was beginning to realize it wasn't the past he needed to escape, it was the fear of confronting it. Maya's eyes glistened with unshed tears, but she didn't move away. Instead, she whispered, "We've waited so long for this, haven't we?" Ethan's throat tightened, and he could only nod. Words felt inadequate, incapable of holding the sheer weight of what had passed between them and what was just beginning. The rain outside had slowed to a soft, rhythmic drizzle, but the storm in their hearts had only just started to settle. They were on the edge of something fragile yet beautiful, something that might finally allow them to forgive themselves, to forgive each other, and perhaps to find the courage to begin again. The piano's final notes echoed softly like a promise. Maya's voice, gentle and teasing, finally broke the spell. "Hurry, Ethan. Mom will be home soon, and we can't have her walking into this chaos." He smiled faintly, the corners of his lips trembling. "All right," he said softly, knowing that this moment, this music, this closeness, was something neither of them could ever forget. And just like that, in the dim glow of the living room, Ethan realized that some connections, no matter how stretched or broken, never truly fade. They simply wait for the right moment to return, to heal, and to remind you what home really means. The piano had fallen silent, but its echo remained, a whisper of memory in the corners of the old house. Ethan and Maya sat side by side, the quiet between them a fragile living thing. The rhythm of the storm outside had found its way into their own hearts, a turbulent mix of thoughts and emotions. Neither spoke, as if afraid that words might shatter the delicate bridge they had just begun to build. Maya's fingers rested lightly on the keys, still tingling. "Do you remember the night Dad left?" she finally asked, her voice a soft, trembling thread. She kept her gaze on the rain-slicked garden outside. "You told me you'd never leave, that we'd always be together." Ethan's chest tightened. He remembered that night with a painful clarity, the promise he'd made to protect her, to stay close, and the way he had broken it. He'd left for college the very next morning without a real goodbye, leaving a void that had stretched for years. "I know," he said quietly. "I broke that promise." Her voice caught. "Then why did you go?" He looked at her then, really looked at her, for the first time in years. The Maya before him was both the little sister he remembered and someone entirely new. Older, wiser, and with a quiet strength he'd never seen. "Because it hurt too much to stay," he admitted, the words raw and honest. "Everything reminded me of what we'd lost. I thought leaving would make it easier, but it only made the silence louder." Maya's eyes glistened with a mixture of anger and understanding. "You could have taken me with you," she whispered, almost to herself. Her words were a soft blow, a blend of longing and reproach that cut deeper than any accusation could. A wave of guilt washed over Ethan. He had never once considered how different things might have been if he had chosen to stay, to fight through the pain with her instead of running from it alone. He reached out, his fingers gently brushing a strand of hair from her face. The touch was deliberate, carrying all the unspoken apologies he had buried for years. "Maya," he began, his voice faltering under the weight of it all. She turned toward him, her eyes wide, no longer trying to hide the storm of emotions within them. There was hurt, yes, but there was also hope, and a fragile spark of something deeper that neither of them dared to name. The room was filled with the soft sound of their breathing, mingling with the gentle patter of rain against the windows. For a long moment, they just looked at each other. Two souls tethered by years of absence, standing on the edge of a new, uncharted territory. Then, almost instinctively, Maya moved closer. Her hand brushed against his, not on the piano this time, but in the small, charged space between them. "I miss this," she whispered. "I missed us." Ethan felt a lump rise in his throat. "I missed you too," he said, his voice tight with emotion. He wanted to pull her close, to hold her and make up for all the lost years, but the sound of a car outside shattered the moment. Headlights swept across the window, casting long, dancing shadows. "Mom's home," she said softly, a note of alarm in her voice. The fragile bubble burst, and they were suddenly aware of the world outside their shared moment. Maya quickly wiped her eyes, while Ethan tried to compose himself. The front door creaked open, and their mother's voice called from the hall. "Maya? Ethan?" There was warmth in her tone, but also a deep weariness, years of worry etched into every syllable. Their mother took in the scene, her children together, the piano in slight disarray, and for a moment she simply smiled. "You came back," she said softly to Ethan. He nodded, unsure if words could capture the torrent of emotions he felt. "I missed home," he admitted. She pulled him into a brief, firm hug, a gesture that held a lifetime of unspoken forgiveness. They spent the next few minutes talking about ordinary things. The weather, the garden, small repairs. But beneath the surface, the tension and emotion from earlier still lingered. Maya stayed close to Ethan, their hands brushing occasionally as they put the music sheets away, each touch a reminder of the bond that had endured. Later, after their mother had gone to make tea, they found themselves drawn back to the window. The rain had slowed to a soft drizzle, and the streetlights cast a dim golden glow. "You know," Maya began, her voice barely a whisper, "we've spent so many years apart, and yet it feels like nothing has really changed." Ethan looked at her, seeing the mix of sadness and resilience in her eyes. "I think some things never do," he replied. "Some connections just wait for the right moment to return." Maya smiled faintly, a small bittersweet curve of her lips. "And maybe this is that moment." He nodded, feeling the truth of her words settle deep within him. For the first time in years, the house felt like home again, not because of the walls or the furniture, but because he was with the one person he had loved, lost, and finally found again. The sound of the rain had faded completely now, leaving only a soft hush over the old house. Ethan and Maya stood together in the living room, side by side, the weight of the night's events still pressing gently on them. Their mother's presence was a quiet, humming comfort from the kitchen, but the space between the siblings remained charged, a mixture of relief, longing, and all the unspoken questions that had accumulated over the years. Maya broke the silence first, a playful note in her voice, though her eyes betrayed a lingering worry. "Do you think Mom noticed anything?" Ethan shook his head, a small smile touching his lips. "I don't think so. She's probably just happy we're together again. That's what matters, right?" Maya's gaze softened. For a moment the years of distance seemed to dissolve, leaving only the sister he remembered, now older and wiser, and the brother she had longed to reconnect. They moved toward the window, drawn by the calm that had settled over the world outside. The streets glimmered and the garden glistened, still dripping from the earlier storm. "It feels strange," Ethan said softly, leaning against the window frame. "To think how long it's been since we really talked like this." Maya nodded, her fingers tracing patterns in the condensation on the glass. "We've spent so many years apart, but being here now it feels like no time has passed at all." He glanced at her, noticing the faint sheen in her eyes and the subtle curve of her lips. He wanted to pour out all the regrets, the apologies, the words he had kept locked away. But sometimes a shared silence can say more than any spoken word. Maya turned to face him, her expression serious now, tinged with a vulnerability he hadn't seen in years. "Ethan, I miss this," she whispered. "I miss Cetus. Not just the music, but this. Being able to be honest, to just be together." A lump formed in his throat. "I missed you too," he admitted, his voice low and trembling. "I thought leaving was the right choice, but I see now. I didn't realize what I was giving up. The wind rustled softly outside, a gentle sigh of agreement. They stood there in silence, their hearts echoing each other's thoughts. It was a quiet, intimate moment, suspended in time. Ethan reached out cautiously, his hand hovering near hers. Maya didn't pull away. Instead, she placed her hand lightly on top of his, their fingers brushing, a touch that was both tentative and filled with a profound, complicated warmth. "I never wanted to lose you," Ethan said softly, almost to himself. "Even when I thought leaving was the only way, I couldn't stop thinking about you." Maya's breath hitched. "I never wanted to lose you either," she whispered back, her voice a mixture of relief and a quiet, lingering heartbreak. "Even when I was angry, I always hoped you'd come back." They stayed like that for a long moment, hands touching, hearts open, letting the emotions flow freely. Suddenly, the soft creak of the floor announced their mother's return. "Are you two planning to stay in the hallway all night?" she asked gently, a knowing smile on her face. They broke apart slightly, their cheeks warming. Their mother placed a tray of tea on the table. "It's nice to see you two together again," she said softly. "You've grown so much. Just don't forget that home is always here for you." They both nodded, their hearts swelling with a quiet gratitude. After their mother left them alone once more, the quiet returned. But it was different now, gentle, comfortable, and full of possibility. "Do you think everything can go back to the way it was?" Maya asked, a hint of doubt in her voice. Ethan shook his head slowly. "No, things will never be exactly the same. But maybe we can start again. Build something better, something stronger." Maya's hand found his again, their fingers intertwining naturally. "I'd like that," she said, her voice soft but certain. "I don't want to live in the past anymore. I want to move forward with you." He looked at her, his heart catching in his chest. In that moment he realized that beginnings often come disguised as endings. They sat by the window for hours, talking quietly about everything and nothing, childhood memories, dreams for the future, the small regrets that had shaped them. Each conversation, each shared laugh, stitched them closer together, weaving a tapestry of trust and understanding. As the night deepened, Ethan turned to her. "You know," he said, "we don't have to rush. We have time to figure everything out. But I want you to know, I'm here now, for real this time." Maya's eyes glistened with unshed tears, her lips trembling into a soft smile. "I know," she whispered, "and I'm glad." The storm had passed completely, leaving the world outside calm and quiet. Inside, the house felt alive again, not with music alone, but with the heartbeat of family, connection, and a newfound fragile hope. They had found their way back to each other, not perfectly, but truly. And that, they were beginning to understand, was more than enough.